France just witnessed political chaos that most democracies would consider unthinkable. A fourth Prime Minister toppled in barely 12 months. And this time, the consequences could reshape European politics forever. On Monday evening, François Bayrou's administration crumbled spectacularly when French lawmakers delivered a crushing blow. 364 votes against his confidence motion, with only 194 in favour. But here's where it gets controversial. This wasn't just another routine political shuffle. This represents a systematic breakdown of France's governing capacity that's sending shockwaves across the European Union. Bayrou joins an exclusive club no politician wants membership in, becoming the fourth French Prime Minister to fall within just over a year. Like his predecessor Michel Barnier, he was ultimately destroyed by budgetary disputes that exposed deeper fractures in French society. And this is the part most people miss. Each collapse makes the next one more inevitable. In his final desperate plea to legislators before the vote, Bayrou delivered what many consider a prophetic warning. Submission to debt is like submission by arms. He wasn't exaggerating. France's national debt has ballooned to a staggering 3.415 trillion euros. Think about that number for a moment. That's more than most countries' entire GDP, and it's growing every single day. Defying pressure from both left-wing parties and far-right factions, Bayrou reminded the assembled lawmakers of a harsh truth. While they possessed the power to topple the government, they completely lacked the power to erase reality. The reality he referred to? France's deteriorating financial position that threatens not just domestic stability, but the entire Eurozone's future. But Socialist group leader Boris Vallaud wasn't having any of it. In what observers called a scathing takedown, Vallaud tore into Bayrou's record, condemning his false promises and betrayals. His bold declaration that it is now for the left to govern signals a potential seismic shift in French politics that could fundamentally alter the country's trajectory. Meanwhile, far-right powerhouse Marine Le Pen cranked up the pressure on President Emmanuel Macron with language that bordered on revolutionary. She didn't just suggest Macron should resign, she demanded he step aside before the people force him out. Her insistence that dissolving the National Assembly is not an option but an obligation reveals the depth of institutional crisis gripping France. After calling the confidence vote back in August, citing France's disastrous finances, Bayrou had launched an intensive media campaign to sell his controversial €44 billion austerity package to sceptical French citizens. The policy sparked fierce debate about whether belt-tightening or economic stimulus would better serve the nation's interests. By Monday, however, his demeanour suggested he knew the game was over. His closing appeal for compromise came across as almost apologetic, a far cry from the confident leader who had taken office with grand ambitions. Tuesday will see Bayrou formally submit his resignation to President Macron, marking the end of what many political analysts are calling a failed experiment in coalition building. Bayrou's journey to this ignominious end began with such promise. After Barnier's dramatic fall in December 2024, the newly appointed Prime Minister told Macron he aspired to achieve great things during the 30 months remaining until the 2027 presidential election. Those were ambitious words that now seem almost naive, given how quickly his administration unravelled. When he assumed office in January, Bayrou appeared to have pulled off a minor miracle by negotiating what political insiders called a fragile no-confidence pact with the Socialist Party. This agreement seemed to offer a pathway towards stable governance in an increasingly polarized political landscape. However, Bayrou made a critical miscalculation that ultimately sealed his fate. He failed to address, let alone reverse, the deeply unpopular 2023 pension reform that raised France's retirement age from 62 to 64. This single issue alienated even his most moderate left-wing supporters, transforming potential allies into determined opponents. The reform had already triggered massive protests and strikes, and Bayrou's inability to find a compromise solution demonstrated the limitations of his much-vaunted negotiating skills. The far-right National Rally initially appeared willing to play the role of responsible opposition, deliberately avoiding moves that would destabilize the government during the spring months. This restraint seemed to offer Bayrou breathing room to implement his agenda. But everything changed when Marine Le Pen received her first instance conviction in the European Parliament assistance case. Facing the possibility that her 2027 presidential ambitions could be derailed by legal consequences, Le Pen calculated that her best strategy involved pushing for immediate power, rather than waiting for the next election cycle. This strategic pivot transformed her from reluctant supporter to active saboteur of Bayrou's administration. So, despite his reputation as a skilled negotiator and experienced political operator, Bayrou managed to survive only 9 months in Matignon, the official residence of French prime ministers. His tenure serves as a stark reminder that even the most accomplished politicians can be overwhelmed by forces beyond their control. So what happens next? This is where things get really interesting and potentially explosive. Macron's previous appointment patterns offer some clues about his decision-making process. He took nearly 2 months to select Barnier following the chaotic snap parliamentary elections in summer 2024. Then required 10 days to designate Bayrou as replacement. These delays sparked criticism about presidential indecisiveness during critical moments. This time, however, the Élysée Palace responded with unprecedented speed. Within minutes of the confidence vote results, presidential communications announced that Macron had taken note of Bayrou's downfall and committed to appointing a successor in the coming days. This rapid response suggests the administration recognizes the urgent need for stable leadership. The timing couldn't be more critical. Massive demonstrations and coordinated strikes are scheduled to begin on September 10th, and some observers worry these could escalate into yellow vest-style unrest that paralyzed France in previous years. Adding insult to injury, farewell parties celebrating Bayrou's political demise are already being organized across French town halls, highlighting the depth of public dissatisfaction with the current system. Beyond the immediate crisis of forming a new government, France faces a mountain of unresolved challenges that demand urgent attention. The 2026 budget remains in limbo, creating uncertainty for businesses and investors. International obligations, including signing the controversial agreement with Mercosur countries, hang in the balance. The complex situation in New Caledonia, France's overseas territory, requires delicate diplomatic handling that could determine its future status. Perhaps most significantly for European politics, Macron had promised German Chancellor Friedrich Merz that their jointly defined economic agenda would continue regardless of domestic political turbulence. This commitment involves 20 new joint projects designed to strengthen Franco-German cooperation and provide new momentum for Europe. Whether this ambitious program can survive France's political instability remains an open question, with continent-wide implications. For now, Macron's immediate priority involves finding a prime minister capable of avoiding yet another government dissolution, a prospect that would likely trigger new parliamentary elections and potentially hand significant power to Le Pen's National Rally. But here's the controversial question that's dividing political experts. Is France's democratic system fundamentally broken, or are these repeated government collapses actually the healthy sign of democratic accountability in action? Some argue that frequent changes in leadership reflect a responsive political system that refuses to tolerate incompetent governance. Others worry that constant instability is eroding France's international credibility and domestic prosperity. What do you think? Are these rapid-fire government changes a symptom of democratic vitality or institutional decay? Should Macron himself resign to allow fresh leadership, or would that only deepen the crisis? Share your thoughts, because this isn't just about France anymore. The outcome could reshape the entire European project for generations to come.